It was one of those strange nights that makes your skin crawl and your heart race. The road had been opening up in front of me like an endless ribbon of asphalt as I had been driving for hours. I finally gave in to exhaustion and made the decision to stop and rest for a little while. It was 3 a.m. on the clock. I steered my truck off the highway and parked it next to a sizable, intimidating cornfield. Everything was in complete darkness, with only the dim glow of my truck's dashboard lights to provide any illumination, in an effort to get some rest before getting back on the road. I slightly retracted into the seat. A strange feeling lingered in the back of my mind as I closed my eyes. I dismissed it as mere paranoia and turned my focus to my phone. I watched a few episodes on Netflix of the series I was currently watching to pass the time. Minutes turned into hours, and just as I was starting to lose track of time, I saw movement in the corner of my eye. I shut off the cabin lights out of instinct as my heart leaped to my throat. The vast expanse of the cornfield just beyond my window is revealed by the blue glow from the screen, which casts a glow. Unmistakably, a human figure was there. As I squinted into the shadows, my breath caught in my chest. I tried to push away the nagging unease that had crept over me, like a cold fog, by telling myself it's just a scarecrow as I tried to shake it off. I tried to ignore it, grabbing my phone to distract myself, but after only a few seconds, I felt even more uncomfortable, so I looked again. My attention was drawn to the ominous silhouette lurking among the swaying corn stalks, as if by an invisible thread. I couldn't be certain, but it seemed like the figure was closer now than before. My spine tingled and the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. Like a million tiny ants, fear was nibbling at my skin. There was no traffic on the road ahead, and the emptiness only heightened the ominous mood. The headlights of a lone car that passed by once every 15 minutes briefly broke through the pitch-black night. As the urge to go to the bathroom grew stronger, I thought it would be simpler to simply let it out next to the truck. I warned myself, don't be silly, as I struggled to control the irrational thoughts that were threatening to take over. A sigh escaped my lips as I opened the truck door and chose to brave the silence outside. I went outside into the night, which was filled with an unsettling stillness. As I moved toward the area between the trailer and the cabin, the truck's engine's ominous hum seemed to vanish into nothingness. All of my senses were heightened by the silence. As I started to relieve myself while unzipping my pants, I stopped in my tracks when there was a sudden gust of wind that rustled the corn stalks. Almost stopping my heart, my eyes darted to the field. The figure, which I had mentally dismissed as merely a scarecrow, was gone. My body started to perspire coldly as panic swept through me. I turned to look into the shadows as I quickly zipped up. An icy dread gathered in my stomach as the figure had disappeared from its original location. With my heart racing through my ears, I turned my head to the opposite side. A man was standing there, a short distance from me. his gaze fixed on mine with an otherworldly intensity in his eyes. His voice pierced the quiet night air. "I want you to leave." I felt a chill run down my spine all the way to the bottom of my bones. I was unable to respond because I had a lead-like tongue and was at a loss for words. Every part of me begged me to run away. I stumbled back and practically dove into the safety of my truck without giving it a second thought. As I slammed the door shut and accelerated away from that terrifying scene, the engine roared to life, half expecting to see the ominous figure chasing after me. I took a quick look in the rearview mirror, but there was nothing. There. My heart continued to pound as I drove for what seemed like an endless amount of time. I finally had enough and had to stop. A well-lit rest area was visible up ahead, so I pulled in and parked under the most intense lights I could find. I was thinking of calling the police, but I don't think they would do anything about this situation, or if they would even believe me. The only thing I know is that this was one of the scariest things I've experienced in my life, and as a truck driver, you already experience a lot of strange things. Considering that I've been driving a truck for about 22 years, I've witnessed plenty of crazy things while driving. But this particular instance, man, takes the cake. One of those peculiar nights when the rain fell so heavily that it seemed like the heavens were crying buckets. I had been driving for hours in an effort to complete my delivery on time. The road stretched out in front of me before it vanished into the pitch black. Void. As I'm driving along, I notice something up ahead, just a faint figure in the distance. As I approach, I see that it is a man who is drenched to the bone and is strolling by the side of the road carefree. I've seen hitchhikers before, but this guy was different. It looked strange, walking around here in the middle of nowhere with an eerie atmosphere. I pulled over after slowing down and rolling down my window to yell at him. "Hey, you! Need a lift?" His face was partially obscured by something strange as he turned to face me. He stared at me with those hollow eyes for a brief period of time without saying a word. Finally, without saying anything, he nodded and entered. As I observed his ragged appearance, I experienced goosebumps on my skin, just wet clothes clinging to his frame. "No coat, no umbrella?" I asked, trying to start a conversation and dispel my apprehension. "Where you headed?" His lips curled into a peculiar sort of smile as he shrugged. "Not important." At that, I wrinkled my brow. "Well then, where are you from?" I got chills from his soft laugh, which he made from not so far away. Now, something about the way he responded to my question raised red flags in my mind. But I reasoned that perhaps the man was simply out of luck. I made an effort to block out the strange vibes and concentrate on the road. But every time I caught a glimpse of him out of the corner of my eye, he was simply staring out the window and grinning that unsettling smile. He suddenly laughed, as though he knew some inside joke that I wasn't aware of. I side-eyed him. What's funny, exactly? He turned to face me, his eyes gleaming in the dim dashboard light. I do that. Sometimes. I forced a hard swallow as my hold on the steering wheel grew tense. My gut was screaming at me to leave this situation because there was something very strange about this guy. I made the decision to refrain from speaking and permit some space for silence between us. My heart leaped into my throat as the truck swerved, tires skidding on the slick road. But then, out of nowhere, he yanked on the steering wheel. My knuckles turned white as I fought with all of my might to regain control. I succeeded in keeping us on the path, but by that point, I was drenched in sweat. As panic tore at my chest, I cast a quick glance at him. "What are you doing?" As he pulled a knife out of his pocket, he giggled once more as if it were nothing out of the ordinary. My veins were being flooded with adrenaline as my mind was racing. Before I could react, he lunged at me, even though I knew I had to leave the area. I attempted to jump out of the truck, but the knife sliced into the back of my leg, sending a lightning-fast wave of pain through me. I stumbled out of the truck as blood mixed with the rain on the ground. I was screaming for assistance as I struggled to get rid of this man. His laughter mingled with the sound of the rain haunting me like some horrifying nightmare. I finally succeeded in wrestling him out of the truck after what seemed like an eternity. Without wasting time, I quickly got on my feet. I sprinted away from the situation as if my life depended on it as my adrenaline raced through me, because it most definitely did. I was completely out of it, and panic drove everything I did. My hands shook as I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911. The person who answered the phone assured me that help was on the way in a calm voice. But just as I was regaining my breath, I noticed the flashing lights up ahead. A police car was already coming towards me, which was crazy because I had just called 2 minutes before. They stopped past me and asked if I had seen anyone. I explained what had happened, and I had to get in immediately. The police officers drove to the place where everything had happened, while they explained to me that someone had escaped from a mental institution a little further away and that they were already looking for this person. It would be someone who starts attacking people out of nowhere and really enjoys it. My heart sank as I realized how close I had come to something much worse than I could have ever imagined. Knowing that I might have only narrowly avoided a truly terrifying fate out there on that dark night, I experienced a mixture of relief and fear. I was later told that this man was brought back and transferred to a more secure facility, one where he couldn't easily escape and where there is more security. This night was a memorable experience that I won't soon forget, so be vigilant and trust your instincts the next time you're driving. You can never be sure what kind of horrors are around the next corner. Young truck driving had its perks and drawbacks, exhilarating as it was to be on the open road, the long days and lonely nights could be draining. I was driving down a black highway that evening, feeling the hum of the engine beneath me and monotony of the journey in front of me. My eyes were heavy with exhaustion and my stomach was grumbling like an enraged beast. On the horizon, a dilapidated truck stop's neon sign appeared as a ray of hope. I steered my reliable rig into the parking lot with a sigh of relief. However, when it comes to food and sleep, beggars cannot choose. The location seemed to be stuck in the past, like a relic from long ago. When you entered, you could feel the fluorescent lights buzzing above you, and the room was glowing sinisterly, although the menu board appeared to have seen better. Days. Hunger has a way of making even the shadiest options seem appetizing. I chose a sandwich that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie and returned to my truck with it. I took a cautious bite of the sandwich while I was still in the taxi. It didn't taste all that good, roughly as good as it looked, yet it succeeded in stilling my stomach's rumbling. Once my meal was finished, I opened my laptop and logged on. I should be able to pass the time by watching a few episodes of my favorite show before going to bed. The nighttime sounds appeared to get louder as the episodes progressed and the outside darkness grew deeper. In an effort to get some much-needed rest, I shut my laptop and sat back in my chair. A lullaby that should have put me to sleep was created by the truck's creaks and groans and the far-off howl of the wind. But then it happened. A noise that roused me from my sleep. It sounded metallic, like hammers on a blackboard. I glanced out the window with my heart in my throat and noticed a figure passing my truck. He was dragging a metal tube along the side of my truck. My body was screaming with danger, so I instinctively dug in, hoping he hadn't noticed me. I was thrust into a deafening silence when the scraping sound stopped. In anticipation of any movement, I held my breath. A face appeared before my window. Just as I was beginning to feel secure, it appeared in a horror film. I felt my heartbeat in my temples as fear overcame me. I rubbed my eyes because I thought I was having visions. He was still there and he was looking directly at me. I retreated back into my seat as panic shot through me in the hopes that he wouldn't notice as we remained silent in the dead of night. Seconds seemed to last forever as we locked eyes. He vanished in an instant after. That. My seat jerked as a crash broke the silence. The man used his metal tube to smash my window, which caused glass to start falling on me. I tried to lock the door as he yanked it open as my adrenaline surged through me. He lunged at me with the bar, hitting me with a sickening thud that caused pain to spread throughout my body. I fought back with all of my might after instinct took over. It was a valiant struggle, a struggle of wills in the dark. Because of his superior strength, I was forced to be dragged out of the truck, despite my body protesting each painful motion. The world vanished as darkness descended around me. I was back in the parking lot when I finally opened my eyes, my body aching and battered. I had the impression of being struck by a freight train. I became aware that I had survived whatever had just happened as my senses gradually came back. The last thing I remember was feeling his hands in my pockets, probably stealing all my belongings. When the police arrived, they examined security tapes and took statements. They were able to locate the culprit, a down-on-his-luck man who had taken desperate measures due to his desperation in order to alleviate his financial difficulties. He was only looking for a quick profit. It was a depressing and chaotic situation that served as a reminder of the challenging circumstances that some people encounter. I struggled to get rid of the uneasy feeling for the next few days and weeks. Every time I went out on the road and every time I closed my eyes in the cab, I couldn't help but make a quick double check to see if anyone was around.